I've been watching the slow, methodical erosion of LGBTQ rights with a growing rage. What's happening isn't just a political tug-of-war over policies or social norms. No, it's far more sinister than that. It's an intentional, calculated attack on the very spirit of LGBTQ youth. This isn't about protecting children, as they so often claim. It's about breaking them. It's about ensuring that generations of LGBTQ kids grow up feeling defective, inferior, and undeserving of positions of power. Because here's the truth they don't want to say out loud. They're terrified. They're terrified of a future where LGBTQ people aren't just surviving, but leading, where we're not on the margins but at the center of decision-making. And so, they're trying to cut us down before we even have a chance to stand tall. The strategy is as old as power itself. Control the narrative, shape the minds of the young, and you shape the future. They know that if a child grows up seeing themselves as broken, as less than, they're far less likely to challenge the system that oppressed them. They'll seek survival, not leadership. They'll look for a corner where they can exist quietly, rather than the spotlight where real change happens. And that's exactly what they want. I've seen how this plays out. I've seen young people, full of potential, shrink themselves down because they've been conditioned to believe that certain spaces aren't for them. They absorb the toxic message that their identities limit their capabilities.
And it starts young.
It starts when schools ban books that feature LGBTQ characters. It starts when lawmakers pass bills that prohibit teachers from even mentioning that LGBTQ people exist. It starts when children are told, directly or indirectly, that who they are is inappropriate, controversial, or dangerous. And all the while, the architects of these policies hide behind the same hollow excuse. We're protecting the children. It's a grotesque lie. They're not protecting children. They're protecting their own power. They're terrified of a world where LGBTQ people grow up unbroken, confident, and ready to lead. So they weaponize fear. They censor. They legislate silence. They erase. But here's where it gets even more insidious. Even within the LGBTQ community, these narratives have seeped deep. How many times have I heard people say, well, LGBTQ people are naturally more creative, more artistic, more sensitive? It sounds like a compliment, but it's another trap. It's another way of pushing us into roles that are seen as safe. Artists, dancers, hairstylists, while steering us away from spaces of real power. Because if we're busy decorating the world, we're not leading it. If we're entertaining, we're not legislating. If we're creating beauty, we're not commanding armies or running nations. This stereotype serves a purpose. It's convenient for those in power to have LGBTQ people relegated to roles that don't challenge the existing hierarchy. It keeps us in places where we're visible, sure, but harmless. And it conditions young LGBTQ people to self-select out of leadership roles before they even have the chance to consider them. And now, with the rollback of rights in places like the United States and Argentina, the mask has slipped. The goal isn't subtle anymore. The goal is to traumatize the next generation of LGBTQ youth so deeply that they never dare to rise. It's about making sure they grow up broken, ashamed, and convinced that leadership, power, and influence are dreams meant for someone else. They know exactly what they're doing. By stripping away rights, banning inclusive education, and fostering environments of fear, they're crafting a world where LGBTQ kids grow up internalizing the belief that they are defective. And kids who think they're broken don't run for office. They don't lead movements. They don't sit at the tables where real decisions are made. The cruelty of it is staggering. They use the language of care, protecting children, to inflict lifelong wounds. They cloak their bigotry and concern, but make no mistake, this is about control. It's about ensuring that the next generation of leaders looks exactly like the last, straight, cisgender, and comfortably aligned with the status quo. But I refuse to let them succeed. I refuse to watch another generation of LGBTQ youth be conditioned into thinking that survival is the best they can hope for. We deserve more than survival. We deserve power. We deserve influence. We deserve to take up space in every field, from politics to science to the highest levels of corporate and governmental leadership. To the LGBTQ community, it's time to stop accepting the crumbs of representation and demand full participation. It's time to shatter the lie that we belong only in the arts, in entertainment, or in the margins. We belong at the head of the table. We belong in the boardrooms, the courtrooms, the government offices, and the laboratories. We belong wherever decisions are made. And to the parents out there, especially the ones who claim to want the best for their children, this is your fight too. If you truly want your children to thrive, to grow into strong, confident leaders who can shape the future, then you cannot stand by while systems designed to break them are put into place. This isn't just about LGBTQ kids. This is about any child who's been told that who they are limits who they can become. The systems that crush LGBTQ youth crush ambition, creativity, and self-worth in countless others. You cannot raise a strong, confident child in a world that teaches them that parts of who they are shameful or wrong. You cannot expect your child to lead if they grow up watching their friends be silenced, erased, or pushed to the margins. Real leadership, real strength, comes from environments where kids are free to be fully themselves, without fear, without shame, without invisible ceilings hanging over their dreams. So fight for that world. Fight for the kids who don't have parents who will stand up for them. Fight against the policies that seek to erase, to silence, to marginalize. And fight hard because the people pushing these rollbacks are fighting harder than ever to keep their power intact. We are at a crossroads. We can either let this wave of regressiveness wash over us, leaving another generation broken in its wake, or we can push back with everything we have. We can dismantle the lies. We can rewrite the narratives. We can raise leaders who aren't afraid to take up space. But to do that, we need to stop playing nice. We need to stop pretending that this is just a difference of opinion or a debate over values. This is a fight for the souls of future generations. It's a fight over who gets to lead, who gets to dream, and who gets to shape the world we all live in. And I, for one, refuse to lose. I refuse to lose because losing means another generation of LGBTQ kids growing up believing they are broken. It means more children carrying shame that doesn't belong to them, more dreams killed before they even have a chance to bloom. It means a world where leadership remains homogeneous, straight, cisgender, white, male, while the rest of us are expected to sit quietly in the audience, clapping politely as decisions are made without us. But I'm not here for that. I'm here to disrupt, to demand, to tear down the walls that have kept LGBTQ people out of positions of power for far too long. Because the truth is simple. We deserve to lead. We deserve to influence policies, steer economies, govern nations, and shape the future. Not as tokens, not as exceptions, but as the norm. That's what they're really afraid of. They're not scared of LGBTQ people decorating society with art and fashion. They're scared of us running it. They're scared of queer presidents, trans CEOs, non-binary judges, bisexual generals, lesbian scientists, and gay diplomats. They're scared of a world where power is truly diverse, where leadership is no longer a reflection of outdated hierarchies, but a mosaic of human experience. And so, they attack us where it hurts the most, at the root. They go after the children. They know that the most effective way to maintain power is not through direct confrontation, but through prevention. If they can ensure that LGBTQ kids never grow into powerful adults, if they can convince them early that leadership isn't for them, then the battle is won before it even begins. It's why they fight so hard to control education. It's why they lose their minds over inclusive curricula and diverse representation. Because every time a child sees themselves reflected in positions of power, it plants a seed of possibility. It tells them, you could be this. You belong here. And that terrifies those clinging to the status quo. But here's where it ends.
Because we see through it now.
We see the pattern. We see how every Protect the Children bill is really just a Protect the Power bill. We see how every attempt to erase LGBTQ people from textbooks, from libraries, from classrooms, is really an attempt to erase future competition. They don't want queer kids to see themselves as future presidents, doctors, or CEOs. They want them to see themselves as accessories to society, valuable for entertainment or creativity, perhaps, but never for leadership. And for too long, we've played along. We've accepted visibility as a substitute for power. We've been grateful for scraps, token roles, surface-level representation, hollow gestures, while real power remains locked away behind the same gates it's always been. But gratitude for crumbs isn't liberation. And I'm done being grateful. This is the moment to demand more, not just for ourselves, but for the generations coming after us. Because every LGBTQ kid growing up today deserves to know that they can be anything. Not just artists or dancers or hairstylists, though if that's their passion, amazing, but scientists, politicians, billionaires, astronauts, revolutionaries. They deserve to see that no role, no dream, is off limits because of who they are. And for that to happen, we need to shatter the entire system that tells them otherwise. We need to burn down the narratives that link queerness to limitation, that paint us as inherently fragile, emotional, or ill-suited for leadership. We need to dismantle the lie that our identities make us less capable of rationality, strength, or strategic thinking. Because that's all it is, a lie, perpetuated to keep us in line. And to the parents who say they want what's best for their kids, this is your responsibility too. If you want your children to thrive, to truly thrive, you can't stand idly by while entire systems are built to break them. You can't buy into the fear-mongering, the propaganda that paints inclusive education as dangerous or corrupting. Because the real danger isn't in teaching kids about diversity, it's in teaching them that parts of who they are must be hidden or erased. If you want leaders, innovators, and visionaries, you need to raise kids who believe they're worthy of leading, innovating, and envisioning. And that means standing up against policies that seek to silence and erase. It means calling out bigotry even when it's disguised as tradition or family values. Because let's be honest, the real family value is loving your kid unconditionally, not just the parts of them that fit neatly into society's expectations. I've seen what happens to kids who grow up believing they're broken. I've seen the toll it takes, the self-doubt, the depression, the years wasted shrinking themselves to fit into molds that were never made for them. And I've also seen what happens when kids grow up knowing they're worthy, knowing they belong, knowing they can lead. The difference is night and day. One grows up apologizing for existing. The other grows up ready to change the world. That's the future I want. Not just for LGBTQ kids, but for all kids. A world where leadership isn't dictated by outdated notions of identity, but by passion, vision, and capability. A world where diversity in leadership isn't an anomaly, but the standard. A world where the trauma of erasure and shame is a relic of the past. But we don't get that future by waiting politely. We get it by demanding it, by organizing, by voting, by creating art that challenges, by educating ourselves and each other, by showing up in spaces where they don't expect us, by running for office, by sitting on boards, by teaching, by leading, by refusing to be erased, and most importantly, by raising the next generation with the tools to do the same. We need to tell every LGBTQ kid, every kid who's ever felt different, that not only do they belong, but they're essential, that the future needs them, not as side characters, but as main players. Because here's what I know, the world is on the brink of massive change. Old systems are crumbling. New ideas are taking root. And the people best equipped to lead us forward are often the ones who've been pushed to the margins because they see the cracks in the foundation that others ignore. LGBTQ people have always been visionaries. We've always been disruptors.
We've always been innovators.
It's time we stop letting others define the limits of our influence. It's time we take what's ours. No more waiting. No more asking nicely.
We lead now.
So now, it's time for a call to action, one that demands urgency, courage, and relentless determination. Because we're standing at a crossroads, and the choices we make today will either liberate or further imprison the generations that come after us. This is a fight for survival, yes, but more than that, it's a fight for power, dignity, and the right to shape the future. To the LGBTQ community, I say this: we can no longer afford to play it safe. We can no longer afford to focus only on visibility when what we need is influence. Being seen is not the same as being heard. Being tolerated is not the same as being respected. We have spent decades fighting for scraps of acceptance, for moments of recognition, but now the stakes are too high for half measures. It's time to stop apologizing for our existence. Stop limiting your ambitions because society taught you that certain spaces aren't for you. You were never meant to stay in the margins. We need queer politicians, trans scientists, non-binary lawyers, bisexual CEOs, gay generals, lesbian activists, and pansexual diplomats. We need LGBTQ people in boardrooms, on ballots, in courtrooms, in laboratories, and in every room where decisions are made about our lives. If you are LGBTQ and you have ever told yourself that politics isn't for you, that leadership isn't for you, that certain spaces are for them, not for people like us, unlearn that lie right now. You deserve to be there, and we need you there. The collective needs you to rise. This is not the time to be passive. Run for office. Start your own business. Lead your community. Fight for change in your workplace. Mentor queer youth. Sit on school boards. Write policies. Challenge oppressive systems head-on. We must also dismantle the internalized narratives that limit our community. We can no longer accept the idea that queerness limits leadership potential or narrows our options. Being queer is not a barrier, it's a force. Our community has survived, innovated, and thrived against odds most people can't imagine. That resilience, that creativity, that refusal to give in, those are leadership qualities. Own them, but we can't do this alone. To the parents of LGBTQ kids, this is your fight, too. Loving your child isn't enough if you remain silent while systems are built to destroy them. Supporting them privately means nothing if you're not willing to fight for them publicly. If you truly want your child to succeed, to thrive, to lead, then you have to stand up and battle the forces trying to crush their potential before it even blooms. Don't fall for the lie that censorship protects kids. It doesn't. It silences them. It isolates them. It tells them, you don't belong here. Don't allow lawmakers, school boards, or misguided cultural narratives to convince you that erasing your child's identity is somehow in their best interest. Advocate loudly. Show up at school board meetings. Fight for inclusive education. Speak out against anti-LGBTQ laws. Vote for leaders who will protect your children, not erase them. Surround your child with diverse role models. Show them queer leaders, scientists, artists, and innovators. Let them see that their future is limitless. And most importantly, empower your child to lead. Teach them that their voice matters, that they don't have to fit into the mold society has built for them. Instill in them the belief that they can be anything, go anywhere, and shatter any ceiling placed above their head. Because here's the truth that terrifies those in power. Confident, empowered LGBTQ kids grow into unstoppable adults. Adults who lead revolutions. Adults who rewrite laws. Adults who take over industries. Adults who change the entire course of history. And that's why they're trying so hard to break them young. So don't let them. LGBTQ community, rise up. Be louder. Be bolder. Take the spaces they told you weren't for you and make them your own. Stop asking for permission. Take it. Parents, fight like hell. Your child deserves a world that doesn't just tolerate them but celebrates them. A world where they can thrive, not just survive. And it's on you to help build it. Together, we can create a future where LGBTQ children grow up unafraid, where they don't just dream big but achieve big, where the trauma and shame that previous generations endured end with us. But it will take all of us. Every activist, every ally, every parent, every teacher, every politician, every community member to push back against the forces trying to drag us backward. This isn't a drill. This isn't a phase. This is a movement, and it's time to lead. No more broken children. No more silenced voices. No more stolen futures.
We lead now.
And we don't stop until the world belongs to all of us.